Hi, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of a 10-minute talk with Karen Plum. I'm Parthajeet Sarma, and most people call me Partha. Some of you who joined us in the last episode, and thanks for that, may remember that Karen is the Director of Research and Development at Advanced Workplace Associates London. Thanks for doing this again, Karen. Now, we are beginning to do these online meets more frequently than before, as we do not get to meet other humans as often as before. Personally, these have been very helpful in making me feel more engaged with work and with people. Now, within organizations, when teams work remotely and there are no water cooler moments at the office to look forward to, communication becomes a challenge as people tend to get disoriented and distracted very, very quickly. The Indian version of water cooler moments at the office is getting together over a cup of chai on the street, usually right below the office tower. Everyone does that. Even the Indian Prime Minister does it to every visitor he receives. But people do not really like it when things are done to them. So when the Indian Prime Minister goes to Japan, the Japanese decide to give it back to him. Poor guy. Meanwhile, in other news, a family that traveled recently decided to put the water bottles to good use. The challenge, as they say these days, is for people and organizations to keep the head above water. This family seems to have taken that quite literally. The other big challenge for organizations is to keep their people engaged and communicating with each other. More and more people will work remotely regularly over the coming months. In this scenario, how does one create digital touchpoints and virtual water cooler movements? Let's hear it from Karen.
Thanks, Partha, and good to be here with you today. And I love the Indian Prime Minister taking chai with everybody. That's a really good one. Shows the importance of connecting with people, doesn't it? So, hello everybody, and welcome to this second session. I'm just going to share some slides with you. And talking about those water cooler moments. So as I say, welcome to the session. And as Partha mentioned, I'm Director of Research and Development at AWA. And for the last 6 years, we've been doing some research to understand what makes individuals and teams the most effective that they can be. And we've gathered a lot of academic research in this endeavour, and are going to be sharing just a bit of that with you today. So what are we doing today? So we're going to look at water cooler moments, what they are and perhaps what they aren't, and are they all there cracked up to be. Do a bit of sharing of what the research tells us about the importance of relationships with individuals in our teams and our organizations. Look at how working virtually impacts on our ability to communicate and share with each other. And we'll finish off with just a few ideas about keeping connected. So without any further ado, so what are water cooler moments? So Google provided me with a definition, which is something I'd really lost track of, that the water cooler moment used to be described as that sort of significant moment from a TV event or program that everybody was talking about the next day. But of course, in the days of Netflix and catch-up TV and whatever, perhaps there's a lot less of that sort of everybody watching the live event these days. But obviously, there are still some things that people watch as they're being broadcast. But in terms of the way we generally think of water cooler moments, it's about informal conversations. And of course, if we're all heading to get a drink, then we might bump into each other at those water cooler moments. And the idea is that having bumped into somebody, we would have a conversation that we wouldn't otherwise have had. So why are these moments deemed to be so important? Well, I guess there are a number of different things that happen when we bump into other people that perhaps we might not have encountered if it weren't for that opportunity. But it's all about being informal. It's about connecting. It's showing some care and concern for other people. It's sharing something, maybe it's gossip or some ideas, or it's just, something's just been sparked because you're having a conversation with that person. But I think people do pay a lot of lip service to the sort of idea of those serendipitous moments. And for many at the moment, it would be the very reason why they would want everybody back in the office, for the serendipity, for the bumping into people, for the creativity. And I don't deny for a moment that does take place, but I do wonder, really, in the grand scheme of things, what's the total value of all of those interactions? But what is important for sure is the social dimension. So the informal interactions that we have with our colleagues and our wider extended people in the organisation. So just as a quick overview, the research that we've been talking about for the last few months is based on 20 years of academic research. So this isn't research that we've commissioned and taken part in, but it is a review of all the research that has taken place in over 20 years that looks at how teams work together, particularly when they work virtually. So they're not together all of the time. And we partner with the Centre for Evidence-Based Management, so they have done all the heavy lifting on this research and given us the results. And as a quick overview, we have established 6 factors which are critically important to the performance of teams. So these 6 things strongly correlate with the performance of teams. So we're not claiming cause and effect here, but we know, for example, if there is trust within a team, then the performance of the team will be higher than a team where there is no trust. So of these 6 aspects of factors that you see here, social cohesion at the top, trust on the top left, and information sharing on the bottom right are the 3 things that are particularly prone to damage when apart from each other. Now, trust is a very underlying factor. It's a foundational factor for the others. And you can imagine, if you don't trust somebody, you're unlikely to want to share your information and skills and expertise with them because you're never quite sure what they're going to do with it. So these things are all really very important. And this came out of the research. It showed that these factors were strongly correlated with team performance. And there are a number of sub-factors which help us to access those, the key factors. So for example, today we're concentrating on the information sharing factor. And some of the important aspects of that are communication, how we communicate with each other when we are working apart, and we'll come back to that in a little while. We also know that if there are good, strong relationships and trust and good supervisory support, then the degree to which we coordinate our tasks will also be a lot more effective. So that's a very high level view of this research. There is more information on our website, and we'll make that available to you. There's lots more you can dig into if you're interested. But to say, sharing things with our colleagues, sharing our expertise, the knowledge that we have, the experience that we've amassed, if we share that, then it helps to develop and sustain trust between individuals, and also the cohesiveness of the teams that we work within. And these are really important. And you can see that there's a virtuous circle here, so that if I share things, then the people that I'm sharing them with are likely to increase the level of trust that they have in me. And if they trust me, I'm perhaps more likely to share a bit more with them. So it is something which is really important. And the relationships that we have are obviously the ways in which we get our work done and secure better performance and better outcomes. So just to reinforce, trust really is an underpinner of these different factors. And in our last session, Partha and I were talking about trust and how important it is in relationships, and how you can take responsibility for the trustworthiness in your relationships. It's something that gets broken very quickly. So we have to be more intentional, and we have to pay attention to how our behavior might be interpreted, and looking out for breaches of trust. Back to social cohesion, that is the factor which is most strongly correlated with team performance. And we have to be thinking about the degree to which we know each other as people. Do we know, much about each other's backgrounds, our personal lives, in as much as we're happy to share that? What's going on for us with our families, our personal situations, but also what do we know? What are we good at? How do we like to work? What are our skills and our expertise? The more we know about each other, the more we can call on the skills and the capabilities of people when we need them, allowing us to have better outcomes in the tasks and activities we're trying to deliver. If we don't share that stuff, then knowledge becomes siloed and it's not accessible to us, and therefore it's not accessible across the organisation, and a lot of opportunity can be missed. So just to come back to the notion of what happens when we work apart from each other, we know from our research that teams tend to share less when they work virtually. That's what the research has found. And they might do much less of the social interaction stuff, but they do tend to be good at sharing information and knowledge when it's in the pursuit of solving a problem or helping a particular activity to make progress. So we're good at bringing things together in a crisis, if you like, or for something specific, but we neglect a little bit the social dimensions. So whereas we might bump into each other at the water cooler, we don't go out of our way to be social with our colleagues when we're online. And that's a big mistake. We have to maintain those relationships, otherwise they will start to fracture and come under some strain and tension. So just a couple of final ideas. One around communication, which I mentioned was an important part of information sharing earlier on. And this slide is really just illustrating that all of these different types of activities have different levels of richness in terms of the amount of information that is conveyed about the person sending the message or having the interaction. Obviously, face-to-face interactions are the richest. We get to see the whole person. We see body language. We hear tone of voice. We see, expressions. And there's a lot of rich information that comes across when you're with somebody. A video conferencing call gives you some degree of that, but it's not quite the same experience. And so on down this a continuum of richness. Obviously, written communications have far less rich information, but they can be very appropriate for particular types of interaction. Thing to say is that we should also, if we're planning an interaction or a meeting or a sharing, we should think about, is it important that we have a component and an aspect of cohesiveness as part of this? And that may help us to determine what is the most appropriate type of way to communicate. If we're not particularly bothered about building cohesion through the communication, then perhaps a written form might be okay. But if we haven't done anything with the team for a while and we really want to get together and generate some good buzz, then obviously something which is audio or visual would be much more effective. And last but one thought is around planning those interactions. So, and really just planning, essentially, just thinking about what you want to achieve in any particular situation. What's the goal? Who do we really need to have involved? is it really super urgent? Do we need to be undisturbed whilst it's going on? Do we need a record of it? And being a bit more thorough about setting the thing up so that everybody knows what the purpose is. Lots of people say they spend time in meetings, they're not sure why they're there, they're not sure what the purpose is, and it all feels like a bit of a waste of effort. So that's something we can try to address in that way. And final thought, taking responsibility. Last time we talked about taking responsibility for trust. This time we're taking responsibility for the relationships that we have with people, and recognizing that informal interactions are really the ones that oil the wheels of the relationships that we have. So we should really be very intentional and reach out to colleagues to have those substitute water cooler moments. So that was really all I wanted to share at this point. So Partha, I think we have some questions.
Indeed, Karen, we have a couple of very interesting questions. Let me just try and collect them. But, brilliant insights, Karen. I mean, I really love the way you connected academic research to the way it's actually being played out in the world today, which is so very important. Otherwise, academic research is something which kind of gathers dust. So this is actually going live across Facebook, YouTube, Dailymotion, and Twitter, and I'm beginning to get some questions.
Great.
Whoever is watching, please type in your questions in the comments section. And I have a very interesting first question. This is coming in from Kashif in Dubai, and he's asking, trust, cohesion, and more information sharing comes out in a much better way during water cooler moments when two or more workmates are unanimous in bad-mouthing their other mates, especially their bosses. Any research on this aspect of positivity in negativity? Thank you for that.
So do we form tribes around the people that we dislike? Essentially, is that what the question is?
I think so, yeah.
I guess part of that is about sharing frustration, isn't it? If there's something going on which is impacting everybody, then it's important that we are able to share those thoughts with each other. I suppose perhaps it tends to diffuse a bit of tension. And help people to feel that they're not sort of on their own, and they're still part of a cohesive group. I don't remember anything in the research around that particular aspect, but I understand the point.
Right. Thanks, Karen. Another question comes in from Manoj. He says, a video meeting or a phone call is generally seen as an event being organized for a specific purpose, and hence does not encourage social interaction and brainstorming as well as face-to-face meeting. Do you have anything to say to that?
Well, I think that that can be the case. I guess it depends on how close the team is. I mean, I know that we in our organisation and in some of our client organisations, video conferences can be extremely effective, and they can be very informal as well. I think you have to go out of your way to try to put something into the mix which allows people to be social, and to really to let their guard down a little bit, and to show the person that they are. And I think it's all about the mood and the atmosphere that you set at the start of an interaction. Obviously, if it's planned, it's going to feel more formal. But sometimes to get the right number of, the right people on the call or in the room, as it were, you have to plan these things in advance. A little less spontaneous, but certainly something that I think is certainly doable, but particularly with a bit of practice.
Right. I'm actually looking at 2-3 screens and trying to look at different questions. A very interesting one, which is coming from somebody. I was actually sending out a few WhatsApp messages to different people, and he said that will there be tea and biscuits in this online event, and which is very interesting actually. I mean, we used to get cakes for our colleagues, right? When there was
That's how you get people into the room, isn't it? One of our colleagues in AWA, she always says, if you're organising a workshop, bring food. Let them know there will be food, because it's very social. isn't it? And you and I were talking earlier about, when you're in the office, if it's somebody's birthday, maybe they'll bring in cakes for everybody, or you'll have, I don't know, champagne if it's the end of the day, or something like that. And I was reading about an organization recently that goes out of its way to send birthday cakes to people that are having birthdays, and then everybody dials into a call, like a virtual happy hour or something, to celebrate that person's birthday. In some organizations that would feel really frivolous. But it's really important, and it's one of those things that we really miss, is being able to, just celebrate with each other, and to show that, it's important that we share those moments, and that we care for each other.
Right, absolutely. I agree. I'm just going through quickly with the questions. Questions are coming in. The other question which comes in from Manish, he's asking, what are some fun things the team can do virtually apart from work? I mean, and I think we've had enough of these virtual coffee meetups and, Friday nights and all of that. What else can we do that? Been there, done that, Karen.
Yeah, well, I guess, we've been through this cycle as well, haven't we, Partha, in AWA? You start off with the quizzes, and actually during our Knowledge Festival earlier in the year, which we had to run online, we played a game. It's a game called Psych, which we all found tremendous fun. I don't think we've played it since then, so perhaps we should resurrect that, because that was a lot of fun, and we laughed a lot whilst we were doing that. So I think different types of online games can be really fun, with the right sort of group of people. But I also get the sense from our own team that sometimes people say they get more out of a session if there's a purpose. So it's not just about chatting all of the time, but if we're coming together around, say, for example, in AWA, we do what we call spotlight interviews. So new members of the team are interviewed, just sort of 10 standard questions, including, what do you do for fun, and, what are your hobbies, and who are your family? And we get to learn about each other. We find out about each other's backgrounds, and our skills, and the things that we love and we hate. And really, these things are all opportunities for us to get to know each other better, which we would do if we were, going to the pub or the wine bar after work as well. We just have to find different ways of doing that.
And do you not think that this will be frowned upon by the bosses, in the sense, like you spoke about some of these events being looked upon as frivolous, when we actually go to work to do something serious?
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, don't you think bosses will frown upon them?
I think some might, and I think it is tricky. I think if you don't appreciate the importance of relationships at work, then you probably will frown on this, and you'll frown on virtual happy hours, and you will have frowned on people going for a coffee in the office. And I think it's very unfortunate, because really the way business gets done is by people working with each other, cooperating with each other, sharing, collaborating. And we will do that a lot more if we trust each other, if we know each other as people, and we're happy and confident to share with them, because we know that by doing so, we're not going to come a cropper, or they're not going to take advantage of us. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to try to share these things with our bosses. We've got lots of this sort of stuff on our website, lots of blogs about what's really important. And I think connecting to the academic research is really helpful, because it means there's an evidence base that says, no, actually, it isn't frivolous. This is really important stuff. And it correlates strongly with the performance of teams.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of academics, I actually have the next question from a Professor Cyril Crasto, and he's asking that, I mean, this question is actually can be replicated for the office scenario as well, but he's saying that students' retention span is hardly 15 minutes. How do you make academic sessions more interesting for theoretical subjects? And I think this is also true for organizations. When people go to work and you're doing something serious, people kind of drift off, and you go to Neverland. How do you retain their attention?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and I think we know through learning, don't we, that the best ways of learning is by doing, and by having bite-sized chunks of information to absorb and to share, and to sort of almost like to learn together. And I think we've learned as well through our Advanced Workplace Institute from our members that they have a very low tolerance for the amount of time they spend online. So we do try to mix up the sessions. So we'll have some sharing, and then we'll have some breakout sessions where you break people into small groups so that they can have more intimate discussions and you can get more involved. And I think you really have to be very purposeful about what you're trying to achieve out of each individual session, and really say, okay, so really how short could we make this so that it's a key learning point? It's not an hour's worth of, drudgery, but we're just trying to get across perhaps just one thing in that small bite-sized interaction.
Thanks, Karen. I think the questions are coming in fast and furious. We have about 4 minutes to go. So we'll
Okay.
probably take one quick last question. And then if you have anything, please write in short questions. This is interesting. If your superior does not share, this also comes in from Professor Crasto. If your superior does not share information, but only on need-to-know basis, what can be done to seek information so that the team can work effectively and cohesively?
That's a really, really tricky one, isn't it? And that two-way exchange of information is so important, because the thing that it really signals is a lack of trust. To me, anyway. I mean, the superior might be withholding that information for very good, commercially sensitive reasons. But if that's the case, then he or she should surely be explaining that. So that people understand that there's a reason why they're not sharing that information with them, and it's not just need to know basis, because actually the need to know is very difficult to demonstrate. There's a lot of information that it would be very helpful for people to have. It might not be immediately relevant to the work that they're working on today, but it might be super relevant to something that's going to happen in the future. And I think, that it's incumbent on leaders to demonstrate that role modeling of information sharing, because if they withhold information, then members of the team are going to do the same thing, because we model the behavior of our leaders because we think that's what they expect from us, and that's the way to get rewarded. So you're going to move into a very pernicious situation where everybody's withholding information and the organization's just losing out on so much potential for that information to be shared and for the organization and the team to capitalize on it. So I think it's very difficult, and as an individual within a team, perhaps all you can do is discuss that in a one-to-one to try to understand the rationale of the supervisor, and perhaps in a subtle way hint that perhaps your withholding of information is perhaps not what they want you to do.
Absolutely. Okay, just one quick question from Manoj again. Is the concept of virtual interaction fatigue a reality now, which hampers online interaction? Is it a reality?
I think it's probably becoming a reality, and I think, in fact, we were talking about this with our managing director earlier on in the day. He was saying that he spent yesterday from 7:30 in the morning to 7:30 in the evening, pretty much in back-to-back calls, and it is exhausting. You don't have any break between the two if you allow those sessions to be booked in that way. You don't even have the time to walk between meeting rooms as you would have done when you were in the office. And I do think it's difficult. I don't underestimate the difficulty of this at all. But I think as a team and as within organisations, we have to start setting some ground rules that we will only perhaps run meetings of 50 minutes, so that there is at least a break between the end of that meeting and the start of the next one. Because I think if you're swapping topics every time you go to a different interaction, it can be really exhausting. And we know that when people were in offices, they would complain bitterly that they spent all day in meetings and never got any work done. So we're just in danger of replicating the same thing, potentially with worse consequences, because we'll also get very static. We don't get up and move around, and that's not good for us physically either.
Thanks, Karen. I think that's all the time we have today. We promised to keep this short and focused. Thank you so much once again, Karen. There are some more questions coming in, but we'll try and write back to them probably.
Okay. Oh,
I'll
and
delete all of that and send it back to you.
yes,
But
indeed. And thanks to everybody that's dialed in.
yeah, I mean, listeners, audience, thanks for coming in this evening, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are. We will actually be back next Tuesday when Karen is going to share a very interesting story from her own personal experience. She's actually been part of a team which has worked remotely for how many years now? I guess about 20 years or
20,
more.
20 odd, yes.
Yes, yes. So when the pandemic came and the lockdowns came, which is coming back again now across UK and many parts of India as well, the team at AWA did not actually, which I am also a part of, it did not really buckle down. It actually became stronger. It thrived. She's going to talk about her experience much more than what we spoke about today. Again, another 10 minutes. We promise it won't be long. Another 10 to 15 minutes of interaction. So please do come back next Tuesday for our next session. And here's a quick announcement before I sign off. For those of you who you're interested in, more of these kind of talks, or you're interested to actually have a look at different workplaces, how they're coping with the pandemic and the after effects of that. There's something called Workplace Week, which is coming up on November 9th to 12th. And these are all online events. You can actually virtually go into somebody else's office. You can listen to discussions like these and many more from across the globe. So do join us. To the first schedule of the week is actually live now on that link that you see online, workplaceweek.com, and hope to see some of you there as well. So thanks so much once again. Thanks, Karen, and hope to see you next week. Yeah. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.